What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We are here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice. This time for the single game showdown slate on DraftKings and FanDuel Monday Night Football Week 13. Cincinnati Bengals versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Welcome. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, single game $1 million winner. And what we do in these videos every Monday and Thursday is talk about the injuries that impact the showdown slate for both sites, discuss low risk lineup construction tips for 50-50s, double ups, head to heads, and then those strategies for high risk contests to help you win the biggest prizes on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Before we get into that, just two talking points I want to touch on from the last couple of days. So this first one, if you watched our Saturday live stream for the main slate, you saw this screenshot. If you're in our Discord, you saw this screenshot. But this was last Thursday, the Seattle and Dallas game. And the past 7-10 days or so for these videos, we've been running extremely hot. Basically, I used all of the strategies I discussed in this video last Thursday to take home a $70,000 ticket to the DraftKings World Fantasy Football Championship. So we'll be going out to Arizona here in a couple of weeks for that. But the one takeaway here is to not get too excited. Yes, you should be listening to us. We know what we're talking about here at Occupy Fantasy and in these videos. Don't want to pat ourselves on the back too hard, but we have been running extremely hot with these lower owned captains, with some of the pivots that we've been talking about for high risk strategies. Just don't forget, these are high risk strategies. They're not going to win every single time. The key is that when they do win, or when they are right, we beat a lot of people very easily, and that's how you win the biggest prizes on both sites. You see DK Metcalf here was a 3% owned captain in this particular contest, scored 60.6 DraftKings points. So yes, very high risk, high reward, but just don't expect that every time. So if you've been new here, maybe the last couple of weeks or just this season, and you've seen all the great success, I know a lot of you who've been watching these videos have had great success, especially the last couple of weeks. Don't overextend your bankroll. There will be highs and lows, but just know that the highs will outweigh the lows over the course of the season. But who's to say we don't have a couple lows in a row? And if you overextend your bankroll, you could be left redepositing. So just a word of caution. Yes, we're going to have some big hits over the course of the season. Let's take it slow. Let's have some patience, and let's not get too eager. Secondly, we got actually a lot of hate mail about Zach Moss this weekend, which if you played Zach Moss, you still probably cashed depending on the rest of your lineup. And the key for guys like Zach Moss, guys like Jalen Tolbert in this particular lineup here, let me scroll down, see if you can see it. Yeah, there you go. It's not necessarily about how many points they score. Yes, we would love for them to score 15, 20 points, but it's about what they allow you to do with the rest of your lineup. So even though Jalen Tolbert, who I did highlight in that Thursday video, only scored 2.7 points, he allowed me to get the rest of these players into my lineup. The same for Zach Moss. We saw Zach Moss in both DraftKings millionaire winners. We saw him in the second place lineup in the big FanDuel GPP. So even though he only scored 6-7 points, what he allowed you to do with the rest of your lineup was key. And at that cheap price tag and at high ownership, his output doesn't matter too much depending on which contest you're playing, and even in some of the biggest contests. So for those of you that have the quick trigger to come at us, or anyone even when a popular player fails or a recommendation fails, just understand what the definition of failing truly is. If I told you Jalen Tolbert would score 2.7 points, you probably would not play him. If I told you Zach Moss would score 7 points, you probably would not play him. But understand that you could still win with him and both of these guys in your contest. So let's just pump the brakes, realize what a player's price allows you to do, and understand what a good outcome is for that player. So, all right, we'll get off the soapbox now, and we'll talk about tonight's slate, Bengals and Jaguars. Let's go over to DraftKings and let's look at the player pool. And we'll start with the injuries that impact the slate. Let's start with Cincinnati. Wide receiver T. Higgins, who hasn't played since week 9. He is returning tonight. All sorts of injuries, hamstring, ankle. He is back. He'll be the wide receiver 2 behind Jamar Chase tonight for Cincinnati. Remember, Joe Burrow is on injured reserve, so Jake Browning will draw the start once again at quarterback for Cincinnati. A non-player pool related injury, Cincinnati's defense, their cornerback, Cam Taylor-Britt. Yes, Cam Taylor-Britt. He is out, their top outside corner, so that is a boost for Jacksonville's outside receivers in Calvin Ridley, in Zay Jones. So let's keep that in mind. Just a reminder, with T. Higgins back, that moves Trenton Irwin to the wide receiver 4. Obviously, has been a big part of the offense when Higgins has been out of the lineup, but that won't be the case tonight. He'll be back to wide receiver 4 status for Cincinnati. Now, on Jacksonville's side, Travis Etienne has the Q tag. He's expected to play limited practice all 3 days. Was in and out of the game, I believe, last week in week 12. But he's going to play. Doug Peterson said he expects him to play. We're not sure if it impacts him at all. We're going to play him as if it doesn't impact him. He's not going to get a massive workload anyway, so he'll get a nice size workload. But I wouldn't let the chest injury or the Q tag deter you from playing or even fading Travis Etienne. They return a cornerback, Tyson Campbell, their number one corner, has been out for the last couple of games. So if you look at Jacksonville's pass defense, their year-to-date numbers, not great. They force teams to pass the ball against them, which that is certainly a strategy in 2023 in this era of football. However, they are getting their top cornerback back tonight, so it's not the easiest matchup like it has been the last couple of games when Tyson Campbell has been out for Jacksonville. And a minor injury that we have to monitor but could have a big impact on who we use at the bottom of the player pool. Brenton Strange, their rookie tight end. Just type him in there. He's only $200. He's the min price. He is questionable. He hurt his foot in Friday's practice and then did not practice Saturday. Generally, that is a sign that a player will miss the game, a mid-practice injury, and then they miss the following day. We'll see. They said they're still running tests on him and giving him treatment. Now, this may not seem like a big deal, but Strange has been running a decent amount of routes. 24 plays last week, ran 5 routes. If his 24 plays are absent tonight, that leaves a few more snaps for Evan Ingram, but it also leaves a few more snaps for their other tight end. Let's find him. Luke Farrell. Questionable himself, but he's going to play. Not in danger at all. But Luke Farrell is going to get some of those snaps, if not most of those snaps, at $2,600, and he's going completely overlooked. We don't expect anyone to really play him. So monitor Brenton Strange's injury, his activation. If they activate a tight end from the practice squad, which they would have to do by 4 p.m. Eastern today, that would be an indication that Luke Farrell will be the solidified number 2 tight end and Brenton Strange will be out. But just keep an eye on inactives around 6:50 p.m. Eastern tonight. Maybe a sneakier play for high-risk contests. All right. One more usage note before we get into low-risk discussion and lineup constructions is that if you haven't been paying attention to Jaguars games, which that's probably fair, Tank Bigsby, who we were drafting in best ball drafts to start the season, he is no longer the backup running back. Dearness Johnson has taken over that role. He is $4,200 on DraftKings. And we look, 7 carries each of the past couple of games, a target or more in each of the past 2 games. He is the number 2 running back now. We'll spell Etienne, mix in with Etienne, and if Etienne's chest injury lingers or if this is a blowout script, we could see more of Dearness Johnson, who, if you've been playing fantasy football for a few years now, you know that when he got his opportunity in Cleveland behind Nick Chubb, behind Kareem Hunt, he puts up numbers. So just definitely a guy to keep an eye on in this game script. All right, now let's talk about low-risk lineups, 50-50s, double-ups, head-to-heads. You just have to beat half the field to double your money. And again, if you haven't read our Showdown guide already, the link is in the description below. You can use code GUIDE50 to get 50% off. It's already sale price. But it talks about historical strategies on how to beat Showdown contests in that guide. We talk about low-risk contests, locking up all the scoring and or playing values. Technically, we can lock up all the scoring tonight by playing both quarterbacks and both running backs, since both running backs should have really nice workloads. So Trevor Lawrence, Jake Browning, that's both quarterbacks. We look at the running backs. Joe Mixon, just 7K on this slate. Travis Etienne, 10-2. $3,900 per player. Yes, we can make this work if we wanted to. We could play Farrell if we find out he's a value with Strange if he's out. We could play one of the tight ends down here, Sample, Irv Smith Jr. We could punt with and then play a kicker, defense, or a mid-range player. We could certainly do this. The other option is we could play Joe Mixon at captain, which may seem weird as a 10-point plus underdog, but this slate is extremely similar to the Thursday slate with Seattle and Dallas, where Zach Charbonnet was underpriced as a big dog with a big workload, and he was a popular captain choice and allowed you to fit in, especially in smaller contests and lower risk contests. So if we played Joe Mixon at captain, and then we put T-Law here in the flex, 48.50, so a little more opportunity here. The Jaguars defense will be extremely popular against Jake Browning and as a 10-point home favorite. So Jaguars defense is probably a must in low-risk contests just to block those users who play that special teams unit and defensive unit. I've also seen some optimal lineups with the Jaguars defense at captain. So these 5 guys generally are who you want to get in. If you wanted to fade Browning, I understand that. If you look at his game logs the past couple of games when he's been filling in for Joe Burrow, it's not like we expect 15, 20 points from Browning, especially in this game script. But especially at 8,800, it's not like he's 6K backup price or 7,500. 8,800, still cheap for a quarterback. but not a guy that you necessarily have to get in. I wouldn't hate if anyone wants to put in Jamar Chase or Christian Kirk or Calvin Ridley instead of Jake Browning. Just depends on your lineup. But basically, these guys are the guys you want to get in as your core of your low-risk lineup on DraftKings. Now, FanDuel is a bit different. Let me get an earlier than usual sip of water really quickly. All right, if we look at FanDuel, Travis Etienne, for whatever reason, is priced up at 16K. He's the most expensive player on the slate. That I don't know why. So he's not a must over here, right? When we can have Joe Mixon at 13.5 for similar workload, we're going to play Mixon over Etienne in low-risk contest. So if we tried to do the full strategy, both quarterbacks, both running backs, that leaves us with just leaves us with just 3K per player. We can't do that. So if we leave out ETN and let's put T-Law at the MVP, which he's probably underpriced as the third most expensive player with probably the highest projection on the slate. So Trevor Lawrence, that leaves with $9,500. And again, a 13K quarterback is really nice in Showdown on FanDuel's half-point PPR scoring. So now you can play Jaguars defense. You could play Evan Ingram. You could play McManus. This is probably the route I would go on FanDuel tonight. It's not the best low-risk contest because you have to fade the 10-point favored running back. But just know that he is pretty overpriced at his price tag on FanDuel. So a little bit different strategy for both sites. But that's why we talk about it here in the video, because with different scoring, different salaries, we're going to have different strategies on most slates. So now let's transition and talk about high-risk contests, leagues, GPPs, satellites. You have to beat a lot of people to win a lot of money. And sometimes we have to take some risks. Often we have to take risks in these types of contests. And as I said at the top of the show, these risks have been paying off beautifully the past couple of weeks. Let's see if we can continue it tonight. The first thing we have to note, and I mentioned it just a couple of minutes ago in the low risk section, is how eerily similar this game is to Dallas and Seattle. All right, let's talk about it from the high level, and especially on DraftKings. The pricing is so similar. The players are so similar. The spread is similar, right? Dallas was a near 10-point favorite in that game against Seattle. Jacksonville is a 10-point favorite here against Cincinnati. Everyone wants to play Jacksonville lineups as they wanted to play Dallas lineups on Thursday. So we will see the field play a majority of 4-2 lineups, 4 Jacksonville players, 2 Cincinnati players, 5-1, 4-1 on FanDuel. So we know, as we saw on Thursday, let's go back to Thursday's, my screenshot, I had 3 Seattle guys. That was automatically leveraged in most contests since most people were playing 4 or more Cowboys. So a leverage spot tonight is to play 3 Bengals. And now, a typical double-digit underdog on Showdown is pretty bad, usually, right? We're thinking Patriots. We're thinking, who are some of the bad teams? Just think of a bad team, right? And we're thinking really bad teams here. But this is a really good team just with a backup quarterback. So we have studs around him. We have some players that are good in fantasy football. So a balanced lineup or a Cincinnati heavy lineup wouldn't be the strangest thing to happen regardless of the game script. So that's certainly one way. But you look at the pricing, right? All right, so we got Dak Prescott, Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, and Brandon Cooks. Obviously, Ridley is cheaper than what Lamb was on Thursday, but very similar there. We look on the Cincinnati side. Browning is Geno Smith. No one wanted to play him. No one wants to play Browning tonight. I mean, look at this contest, this high-dollar contest. Geno was just 30% as a $9,200 quarterback. Chase is DK Metcalf. Higgins is Tyler Lockett. Mixon is the underpriced stud, not stud, but workhorse running back at 7K. Charbonnet was 6,800, right? Sharp's 65% owned in this contest as a 10-point dog running back. Mixon's going to see the same tonight. It's so eerily similar. Evan Ingram is Jake Ferguson, nearly the same price. I mean, it's so eerie how close this slate is. Let's scroll down. Kickers defenses. If you remember on that slate, Cowboys defense was like 50% owned and 12% captain in the largest GPP on DraftKings. We expect Jaguars to potentially get there tonight in that similar type of setup. We have them pretty popular in most contests. All right. Bengals defense, no one wanted to play the Seahawks defense. Everyone played Brandon Aubrey. What was Aubrey in my contest here? 37%. Yeah, we expect probably similar in smaller GPPs for Brandon McManus at 5K. Yeah, remember Seattle? They rotated their tight ends, had 3 different guys we could use. Guess what? So does Cincinnati and Tanner Hudson and Drew Sample and Irv Smith. Rico Dowdle, overpriced for his role, but potential game script, high value touches. He was $4,200 as Pollard's backup. Guess what? Dearness Johnson is also $4,200. I mean, you could not look up a more comparable slate than just 5 days ago or 4 days ago, whatever it was. So all the strategies that we talked about then, they apply here. A lot of the ownership we saw on Thursday, if you don't subscribe to our site or other sites that have projected ownership, you can just look at your contest from Thursday and get a pretty similar sense of how guys will be used and rostered tonight. I mean, it's really crazy. So think about how you approach that slate. Think about what worked, what didn't work, what made you feel comfortable, what made you feel uncomfortable. You can basically apply it tonight. The only difference is, obviously, he's a backup quarterback. Gino's not a backup quarterback. And we had a very clear underperforming cheap wide receiver, or very clear underperforming low-owned wide receiver in DK Metcalf. Chase will be lower owned than he would be if Burrow was in, obviously, but he's not underperforming by any metric. None of the Cincinnati receivers are. In fact, nobody in this game is. So we don't have that clear play where it's like, all right, this is an auto play that the field is not going to be on. But still, just looking at my notes from last slate, it's really, really eerie on how close this slate is to that Dallas and Seattle slate. All right, what else can we talk about here? Let's talk about the cheap guys. We like to highlight them and see which ones make the most sense. Let's scroll down. Let's get another sip of water. Stay hydrated. All right, we've mentioned Dearness Johnson already. Tanner Hudson ran the most routes at tight end for the Bengals 2 weeks ago. It was a bit closer last week. I'm not sure if that was game script related, if that was Jake Browning related, but Hudson is the best pass catcher of the group, has been getting the most targets. Drew Sample, Irv Smith, expect 10-plus routes from these guys, which on a slate where value isn't that great, can be pretty decent if they catch a few passes. So Sample, Irv Smith are in the mix, but Hudson is more expensive, but the better fantasy play. We already talked about the Jacksonville tight end situation. Tank Bixby is now the running back 3. He's not worth playing at $2,200. Irwin has a connection with Browning. Still will get some snaps if Higgins re-aggravates his injury or isn't back to 100%, doesn't play 100% of the snaps. We've seen it with Higgins before. Irwin could be a sneaky low-owned play at $1,800 in the largest contest. Anybody else we need to discuss here? Let's keep scrolling. Yosevich, wide receiver 4 or 5. He'll get a couple snaps. Travion, oh yeah, we want more comps. He's DJ Dallas. Basically min-price guy, sub 1K, who's going to see some passing down snaps, but not many touches. I mean, it's crazy how close this slate is. Anybody else? Yeah, I think that's it. That's all we need to discuss. So, like Thursday, the value is not that great. So we're looking to play guys like Tanner Hudson or Farrell or Irwin or Sample, Irv Smith, and hoping to get a couple of points if we jam in the studs. So if we look at the Thursday slate, if the studs perform, then we might need 2 points from a 3K guy or a 2K guy. So it becomes a little bit more viable on a similar slate. So I don't have much else to say. This slate is so similar to Thursday. Go back and rewatch that video. Go look at your contest. Go look at the ownership. You can look at our projected ownership tonight and get a sense of what worked and what didn't and how you can approach tonight's slate, because how the field is going to play it and what is going to be leveraged is going to be extremely similar on both sites, right? The pricing doesn't line up as much on FanDuel as it did on Thursday slate, but the same concepts still apply. So that'll do it for the video. For more in-depth information on tonight's slate, you want that extra edge, make sure you go read our daily plug. That'll be up Monday afternoon. Our writer Bismo does a great job. Bismo used all the tools and strategy he talked about in the plug on Thursday. He won 11K on Thursday night as well, won a small field GPP, so shout out to him. Go read his work. He will list the top plays, rank them for different contest types. He'll go over some overall slate notes that make sense on how to approach contest for tonight, and he'll give lineup construction tips for 6 different contest types for both DraftKings and FanDuel. If you're playing a specific contest type, all you have to do is follow the template and you have profitable lineup strategies. Occupy model is up and running, has the projected ownership, and our lineup builder is as well, allows you to build up to 300 lineups. I use it every slate, even if I'm only playing a handful of small field lineups just to see what's possible, put in the rules that are from the Showdown Strategy Guide, and just see what lineups pop out the best and are the highest projected based on those rules. That's how I came up with this lineup, in fact. This lineup was generated near the top of our lineup builder when I put in all the rules I wanted to use for the slate, and clearly it worked out. So, appreciate you listening. If you're not subscribed already, make sure you do so if you're not. I know I personally, when I'm watching YouTube videos, even if I watch the same channel over and over, I don't subscribe necessarily. But I think it's important here, especially because the schedule is going to be weird over the next coming weeks with Saturday slates, Monday 2 gamers. The schedule might be a little different when we're out in Arizona. So subscribing is the best way to get notified when we go live or upload any videos. A lot of weird slates coming up. So just subscribe. It's free to do so here on YouTube. You'll get notified whenever we post videos. Give us a thumbs up if you appreciate the content. As I said last video, We're trying to do some accounting for next season and looking at engagement numbers. The more likes we get, the more likely we are to run this series back for 2024. So give us a thumbs up if you want to see this series next year. And any questions, I'll monitor the channel throughout the day. Drop a comment below here on the video. I will answer them. Happily will do so. And if you want in-depth conversations, chat with other members of the community, talk with staff, join our Discord server, occupyfantasy.com/Discord. So Brian Jester for Occupy, thank you for listening, and good luck in tonight's Bengals and Jaguars showdown slate.